without further ado, let's get to the guy who had the whole story today in the New York Post, Joel Sherman. Joel, good morning. Where do you want to begin with this? The layers are fascinating. I personally have been looking for a place to find a flaw, cannot find one. I happen to love this thing. Give us your initial reaction.
So my initial reaction is expectation, which is anytime there's change in anything, notably sports, notably the most tradition-bound sport, which is baseball, you have a lot of people start screaming, no, 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 and they hide and they say, we're purists. And I always say, okay, when did you begin being a purist? Was that now? 2 wild cards? Was it when it was only 1 wild card? When it was 3 divisions? When it was 2 divisions? When it was 1 division? Before it was a DH? Before players of color? Only wool uniforms? Don't use pitching machines? The game is ever changing, right? Like this idea that there's one fixed time where you could be a purist and say that's when the game was perfect is ludicrous. Everything's changing. The NBA drastically changed rules last year. They went on an offensive rebound from a 24-second clock to a 14-second clock. Nobody blinks. In baseball, you make an intentional walk instead of throwing 4 pitches, you just get first base. People go nuts, as if the rules were all created from a mountaintop and put into a Bible. These are man-made rules, and it's the job of Central Baseball, the commissioner, to keep the sport vibrant and interesting and to make money, right? And so you want to satisfy your TV partners. What are your TV partners looking for? They like the inventory that's playoff games. You get a lot more playoff games here. And they like games that have clinching situations. So if you think about it, if you have a best-of-3 series, game 1 is dramatic just because winning the first game in a best-of-3 is important. By game 2, one of the 2 teams are clinching. By game 3, you have a sudden death. I think anybody who watches baseball, loves baseball, I think would like a best-of-3 better than a single wild card. It's tough to watch the Oakland A's win 97 games last year and be done in 3 hours and not have any mulligan whatsoever to go on. I don't think that's how we think about baseball, like football, which plays once a week. We think about baseball more serially. I like that. And quite frankly, by making the stakes high you're adding playoff teams, but the stakes to be the best team in the league, where you get a bye out of the frivolousness of the 2 or 3. So I expect every team to play to the end. I got my division won by 10 games, but I'm right close with another division winner. I better keep playing to the end because I want to stay out of that best 2 or 3. If you're the other 2 division winners, you get or the top wild card, you get all home games in that first round and the 2 out of 3, and you get to pick your opponent, which comes with real problems because, you can imagine the bulletin board material. Oh, you wanted us, right? But you do get to pick an opponent. Like, say a team went to game 162. The Mets went to game 162, and in game 162 had to use both DeGrom and Syndergaard just to get into the playoffs. Well, the Mets become an easier mark, perhaps, in the first round, so I'll pick them even if they have a better record. I think it creates a lot of strategy and a lot of conversation, right? Like, imagine going into that Sunday night show after the last game of the regular season. I can imagine our show. I can imagine all sports talk, radio, TV, internet stuff. Like, who would you pick? Why would you pick them? What's the strategy? Is anyone's job on the line if they pick the wrong one? It's the job of Central Baseball to make it interesting and competitive, and I think this makes it interesting and competitive.
Well, I think it's winning already because the water cooler conversation has been nothing but this since your story came out last night online. It's been amazing. And that's the big part most people miss is that conversation, what you're talking about. That drives eyeballs and drives things. One thing I want to get to, too, Joel, is there's been some pushbacks from some players. I've seen some of their things that they've said, and I don't think they're fully understanding the grasp of, let's take Garrett Cole, for example. How many teams really had the opportunity to sign Garrett Cole this winter? Not many. Now all of a sudden you open up the playoffs and a possibility. Pretty soon you've got 5, 6, 7 other teams saying, I need Garrett Cole. He can get me to the top, and I may make a run to the World Series. That's the other thing that happens is all of a sudden those clubs that were dead and out of it become relevant. Seattle Mariners would have been in 7 times now in their 18-year draft under this new format. Mike Trout would have been in 4 times the best player in baseball under this new format. So I think it changes a lot of things.
It's an important thing for, I think, people who are initially a little skeptical of this to understand, players specifically, that the healthier the game is financially, the richer you're going to be. Let's just boil it down to brass tacks. Do you want to get paid more? This is in your best interest for exploring new ways of revenue generating and not just sitting back on the "this is the way we've always done it" nonsense that has plagued sports, not just baseball, for a long time. Look, baseball is probably unfairly criticized for being too curmudgeonly, too stuck in the mud, too old school, too unwilling to change. That has not been the case under this current administration. And I'm not saying that to, brown-nose anybody. It just remains a fact. And I love your line, Joel, about selectively hiding behind the, I'm a purist stamp. People have to open their minds to this, and it's exciting. It's good for the game. Do you want 7 teams? Do you want 14 markets engaged in the fall or 5? Do you want to completely yield the stage to week 4 of the NFL? Or do you want our game's most important time, the postseason, to be on top of the fold, as they used to say in the newspaper business, and at the top of your scroll?
The other thing, and we'll throw it back to you, Joel, is it's not even just about players do want to get paid. It's opportunity to get a chance to continue to play. Because now all of a sudden, those players that are getting fleshed out have places to go that are going to help teams get play into the postseason. So I think there's a lot to look at. We'll throw it back to you for your thoughts on our little thing that we just threw at you. 5 minutes.
So, Harold, Maddie, one of the things I always say about baseball, I use this line quite often, is the good news is people really care. The bad news is people really care, right? And so because of that, any subtle change in the game, because it's kind of our oldest game in this country. It's the one where statistics matter the most. It's the one where we know the most about history, and history matters the most. And people are very hesitant to want to change anything. But again, I will go back. What do you want to stay at? Do you want the players still all to wear wool uniforms? The game is ever changing. Ted Williams never had a power shake. Willie Mays never did Pilates. I mean, the game is changing. All sports are changing. And the question is, what do you do to keep it interesting? Attendance is down 7 straight years in Major League Baseball. There are many reasons for that, not a singular one. But the fact that so many teams have lost hope before one pitcher is thrown, and certainly by the trade deadline where many are giving up, is not good for the game and is not good for attendance. If teams are driving towards maybe making the playoffs, I think that is helpful to the game. If you told me the sport could be really healthy and only 4 teams make the playoffs, cool. But again, think about the standard we're holding Major League Baseball to. The NBA and the NHL have long had 16 playoff teams. This would take Major League Baseball to 14. The NFL has 12. I think there's a pretty strong belief that if they go to a 17-game season, they might go to 14 playoff teams also. This is what fans want. This is what networks want. More content where games matter. And I think we've driven up the importance not only of October, if it's done this way, but also August and September. The idea of a team sitting a game or 2 under 500 or a game or 2 over 500 on July 15th, the equation and the math is quite different if you're thinking, hey, if we could take a series or 2 here, we're back in contention and we have a shot to win. And as the Nationals showed last year, if you have a strength in an area, like they did with starting pitching, you could start rolling through the playoffs. You can't tell me you love March Madness because you see the chance of a 16 seed or a 14 seed winning and then say, well, this would be wholly disrespectful to the history of the game if a team lower down won the World Series. By the way, a team lower down won the World Series last year.
Yeah, hey, great points, all of it, Joel. We appreciate your time because I know a lot of people want it today because you had this story on the online version of the Post yesterday. It's all over the paper today. Joel Sherman joining us with the proposed playoff format change in Major League Baseball. Joel, thanks.